Welcome, Nahed. How are you?
Doing well. How about you? Thanks for having me.
I'm really good. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. Now, I love the global community that we share. Whereabouts are you today?
Yeah, I'm based in Dallas, Texas, in the US.
Fantastic. And you're just going into your spring, right?
Yes, exactly.
Mm-mm.
Texas kind of has a very schizophrenic kind of weather. Like you can get there's a joke here in Dallas that you can get all four seasons in one day.
I like
Which
Melbourne.
exactly. But yeah, the weather's kind of nice right now. It's starting to get pretty warm.
Fantastic. So it's nice to talk to people in the north, well, the northern hemisphere, and
Yeah.
um, and we're coming together today to talk about scaling HR. You've got a real passion around scaling HR. You've done this a lot in your career, but what are the things that got you to this point? A little bit of an unexpected path, and we were talking a little bit about that when we met a while ago.
Yeah.
So I'd love you to share that.
Now, I love that you say that. I don't think, I think I know maybe two or three people who actually deliberately went into HR early on in their career. Like it was an actual decision that they consciously made early on as opposed to falling into it like most of us. And I'm actually one of those people. I started off, when I was in high school, really, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I was like, hey, what is the degree that gives me the most options and buys me some time to make a decision? I was like, hey,
Mm,
business school made a lot of sense. So I got a bachelor's degree in international business management. But then I'm someone who's always been passionate about technology and IT and so forth. So I got a graduate master's degree in information systems management. Throughout my college years, I was taking like elective courses in HR and so forth. So it was sort of an interesting topic to me, but it was never something I considered would become a career. And the when I actually thought about it consciously is I used to work in a lot of IT sales early on in my career. And there was this company I was working for that was a regional hardware sales, IT sales company, distributors for like HP, Dell, and these kind of organizations.
right.
So I was part of their sales team. And this was a company that was growing triple digits. Money was coming in through the door,
Mm-mm.
expansion, like all the good things you would expect from a business, right? You're growing quickly, your customers are happy, the finances are good, there's good product market fit, but something seemed off with how decisions were being made internally. Leaders were always bickering. It was very questionable how some people were in some positions. And this was me early on in my career, right? And there were people who were making very big decisions who you could tell did not have the capabilities nor the skills to make those decisions. So something seemed off. And I moved away from that company like 8 months after joining them. But I found out like after 2 years after that, they bankrupt themselves from having tens of millions of dollars in revenue. So that for me I was like, this is interesting. Like, this is a company
Mm.
that was like skyrocketing, and they happened to bankrupt themselves within a couple of years of all that success. And I started talking to a lot of people who were in the management in that company, and trying to understand, hey, what happened? Like, how did this really happen? Pretty much, and all of the answers I got pointed to one thing and one thing only: people decisions.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is we're talking about how the organization structure is put together, who are the people in which roles, how hiring was done, the culture of the organization, a lot of things around people were they led to the demise of the company. That for me, I think was the starting point for what got me interested in the space. And I actually went on like a personal mission of just self teaching myself HR as I was doing other types of jobs. And I went through HR certification, just started self learning, during my off hours and and on weekends. And what got me really into the scaling HR space is that I've always had a passion for startups and entrepreneurship because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My parents and grandparents, pretty much all of them, like all the family tree that I actually know who were living at the time that I was born and so forth had some business of some sort, be it a small
Amazing.
mom and pop shop or even big
Yeah.
businesses. So I was always interested in that space. And given that I had no HR experience at the time and I was doing like sales and some other stuff, I actually offered my services pro bono to some
Mm-mm.
VC firms and PE backed, organizations for free. Just I was like, it's a win-win, right? I'll offer some expertise, not expertise, but like I have some knowledge now that I can help you guys with your early stage,
Yeah.
and it'll help me also learn. I did that for 2 to 3 years and it was pretty successful. And that was
Hmm.
really what got me on the path towards working, in the scalability scene of mostly tech companies.
Right. And now just give us a sense of, so what is your business, and what are the kinds of clients that you're working with now?
Yeah, definitely. So I've worked with clients of, all shapes and sizes and geographies and so forth, but I've really narrowed down into companies that are within the 7 to 9 figure mark of revenues. Typical headcount is around the 50 to 100 plus.
Hmm.
That's usually the entry point of most companies I start working with, because that's really where they start focusing a little more on the people side of things. So most of the companies I work with, really, they are on the they are on the growth path, meaning they have started to experience some type of success, and they are planning to grow, and there is a strategy to grow. But where I come in is I help companies grow sustainably,
Yeah.
because a lot of companies, typically when they scale, so this is something not a lot of people know, but almost half of scaling operations fail. And what I mean by that is they invest a lot of money to grow, to expand, to hire, and so forth. But that usually, in a lot of cases, actually leads to either the plateau of a company or the beginning of the end, because of misplaced investments and other things of that sort. So, where I come in, generally speaking, is to work with these companies on designing a people strategy that complements the business strategy, because the people function is an enabler of helping businesses succeed. Of course, the business always has to have the core functions, or the I would say the core requirements of a successful business, right? Meaning you have product market fit, you have a customer base that doesn't churn very highly, you also have solid financial footing. What's remaining is the people side of
Yeah.
things and how you organize the operation. So my role typically is helping companies really organize themselves, be it from their org structures to the people they have to the tech infrastructure, pretty much everything they need from a people side to help them grow, and to help the people function actually enable them to grow at the pace they want to grow.
And I know that you have a perspective that you talk the language of business. I think where perhaps you differ from other HR professionals is that they talk the language of people. And even myself, I talk the language of psychology, but you talk the language of business. Tell me a little bit about how you created that niche for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's I love that question, and I get it a lot too, because given, of course, to your point, what I say usually and how the positioning is. But I'm a strong believer that for HR to be successful and valuable to a business, it has to operate with the business in mind first. So it's being So I was interviewing with the head of people at Kit a few weeks ago, and she gave a lovely quote that I think really embodies this. I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. Is be business first, but people centric, right? What does that mean? It means that if if you're an HR person, you don't understand the financials of the company. You don't understand how it makes money, the customer acquisition costs, what are the profit margins, and how all the nuts and bolts are put together in the organization, and how you actually make money versus where you spend money. It's going to be very difficult for you to know any strategy you put forward, what is the impact on the business. Because the reason I think that's so important from an HR perspective is, and in my case specifically, I work typically with founders, boards of directors, owners, people who are mostly looking at these business metrics of success, right? A lot of times it's driven around revenue, cost, customer churn, annual recurring revenue, all that kind of stuff. If you don't understand these things as an HR person, and you translate them into how can I actually enable these to succeed with the people side of things that I'm doing, I think you will lose value. And that's really and I think that's the reason why there's a lot of debate in the HR world about getting a seat at the table,
Yes.
being a respected function, and so forth.
Yes.
A lot of it, in my opinion, is based on that. When an HR
Hmm.
person isn't able to connect the dots from a business perspective, they lose their ability to influence. So that's really where that comes from my perspective.
How do you manage in some ways, the complexity of really defining a return on investment, though, of the people function? Because I think sometimes, you have professionals who do understand what the need is there, but it's just difficult to create something tangible from what often are very intangible outcomes from strategies related to human resources, people, etc. How do you manage that?
No, yeah, that's a lovely question. To your point, the people function is notorious for being very difficult to quantify in terms of
Yes.
return and impact, right? There are things which are very difficult. Yes, definitely, right? But there are things which are very simple. And generally speaking, when you take a step back, you can always link what you're doing in the people function to some impact on the business as a whole. And let me give you a few examples just to demonstrate, right? Let's say, for example, that we are trying to implement a new recruitment strategy. What do I mean by that? Let's say that today we have been using third party recruiters. We have a few interviewers in the company. We've been using LinkedIn for, for getting, job postings and so forth. And we've been netting some kind of, hey, hires and so forth. So all of these things I just mentioned, they have an impact on the business. If you're using third party recruiters, there's a financial impact, right? Your recruitment time to hire, those are numbers of days where a position is vacant, right? And depending on the job you're trying to fill, there's a financial value you can attach to that, right? Now, when you come up with a new strategy, right, what you do is you measure these indicators from, hey, what was the situation today versus where
Hmm.
are we with the new strategy? And you can try to find out, hey, what is the impact and what are the differences there? Now, the impact on the business differs in many cases, right? Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it can create a financial gain, sometimes it can create a financial savings, right? Sometimes it can actually create an intangible benefit, something like culture, for example,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And what does that mean? Culture, it's not, I wouldn't say it's intangible. It is an indirect impact, meaning if you have a great culture in an organization, right? Something that I also like to give an example with is something like training and learning and development, right? It is so difficult to try and track learning and development impact. If I send, let's say, 10 salespeople to a B2B sales course and
Hmm.
then they come back, right? Just looking at their sales alone is going to be probably not the best indicator, right? So what do you need to look at? There's many things you can look at. You can look at, yes, their output, but you can look at, hey, what is the feedback from their colleagues on how they operate today, right? Are we getting a better sentiment? Hey, how's retention going? All these different things. There's a lot of metrics you can look at, but generally speaking, you always want to try to, as much as you can, link to any business outcomes. And the way I start typically is
Hmm.
I ask really founders and leaders, what does success look like for you? What are
What do
the
they care
things that
about?
are, what do you care about, right? And what are the things that you want to see succeed in the business? And let's
Yeah.
focus on the things that actually impact those things, as opposed to trying to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's also how I think about that.
I think that's really key to focus on results, because what I see when I look at many of the dashboards that organizations are using around their people metrics is there's a lot of input and throughput measures, but not linking to results or not measuring results over time. And I think that you need discipline to do that. Could you think about perhaps an example of some really good results metrics? Because maybe it's that we just need to expand the way we think about what data we're collecting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good example I can give, which was a situation I was dealing with. I think it was like 2 to 3 years ago, maybe. So there was a company that I was working with. They're in the tech space, so it's a B2B SaaS company, and they were hitting a ceiling with their ability to grow their revenues. And what they would do is they would always pump in investment into the company, right? Hire more people and so forth. They would see a little spike in revenue, then it would nosedive a little bit. So when I was referred to them by a client of mine, and I was like, hey, these guys want to, they're not sure what's going on, but they think it's something to do with the people thing. But I wasn't sure what it was at the time.
Nice and
When we took
vague.
it, yeah, exactly. When we took a little deep dive into the operation, I noticed that their turnover rate of their salespeople within the first 6 months of hire was around 40%, which is pretty astronomical, right? And that's within 6 months of hire, right? That's pretty high. So their churn rate was extremely high. What was happening is that people are coming in, they barely get trained to start really impacting and getting sales. They leave, it's a revolving door. Then the company's
Yeah.
spending money again to bring people in,
Yeah.
and there you go. So what was happening with sales is the grunt of sales was being handled by people who've been there for a while, but there was a big chunk of their sales force which was not generating anything. It was just a revolving door. That is a direct impact to revenue. But how did we
Mm.
actually link it to that? We just looked at the numbers, right? Hey, how much of your sales is being generated by the people who've been here for more than 6 months or to a year? It was really like more than 60% of revenues.
Mm-mm.
Then, like, well, amazing. How consistent is their revenue? What is their 3 month average? Moving average. So we tracked also we so I also have some interest in data myself. So I like to plot these things and just do some statistical analysis and so forth. So notice that typically speaking, with their new hires and their new salespeople, sales was pretty flat and would actually start nosediving after a bit. Um,
Yes.
Once we took a deeper look at it, there was a few things which were pointed out. First off, the recruitment process was not identifying the right people, and the people, once they joined, onboarding looked something like this: Hey, welcome to the company. God bless. Go sell. That's onboarding. Really. It's like, hey, go figure it out. Start talking to people. Go click around in the software. Figure out what it does. Hey, talk to a few of your colleagues. You're good to go. We need to sell. Go, 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 go. So as you can imagine, the close rate of those people is actually very low compared to people who've been there for a while. So all the metrics were saying that, hey, there's a bad job going on here. So what we did is we implemented a strategy where we made some changes to the hiring process. We created an onboarding process, and we also created a mentoring program where the people who were actually successful would take a part of their workday and work week and actually deliver training to some of these people and guide them and actually go on to calls with them and give them some coaching.
Yeah.
After they implemented that program, after a 6 to 8 month period, the retention rate actually doubled for these people, and sales actually started going up. 24 months after that program was implemented, the company was actually growing by 8 to 10% year over year. So it had a very direct impact, right? And it all
Mm-mm-mm.
started from a little issue in people, right? The recruitment
Right.
and onboarding. But we were able to tie it completely, from the input to the throughput to the actual output of revenue.
Mm.
So that really was pretty helpful, and we built in the ROI because all of the cost and investment that was done to actually make these changes, right, those were built into the comparison later on, like, hey, this is what the program cost to
Yes.
build, right? But hey, what was the impact here? The impact was really tremendous. Like, they would do it 10 times over because it was really nothing compared to the really the growth that they have from a revenue perspective.
Yeah. And Ned, you talked about so you definitely agree. I think that's a really good story, and but that gives you a sense of that return on investment. I just want to go into that a little bit. You talked about right people, so they weren't attracting the right people. Can you
Correct.
tell me a little bit about what you mean by right people? Because that's something that I
Yes.
talk to clients a lot about. But what do you mean by right people?
No, definitely. So I believe that every company, right, when they define who they're going to be and how they're going to do business, there's a certain kind of profile that they're looking for, typically speaking, that will fit the mold of the business. And there's no such thing as, hey, this person's good or bad. It's, hey, do they fit what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it or not? And where I try to come in is with right people. I mean, hey, are you first of all trying to communicate to the type of candidate who will actually be set up for success in your organization, where their mode of operating, their values, the way what they're interested in, their goals and aspirations, do they actually align with what the business is doing? That for me is the start. And having known that, once you actually bring those people in, are you actually giving them the chance to succeed? Are you setting them up for success, and you're actually
Mm,
equipping them with what
yeah,
they need to actually flourish in the organization?
yeah.
A lot of times what I see, and especially with this specific company, is that we're looking for someone with archetype A, right? And that's kind of what we need. But a lot of times the company does not concretely define what that looks like. And I see this a lot in the early stages of recruitment, right? Where there's this fluffy, very kind of general speak about, hey, we want someone who can do ABC, right? Someone who can hit the ground running, someone who can deal with change and all these different things. But how does that really translate on the job? Does
Yeah,
that mean, hey, if I tell someone that they're selling product A today, but they're selling product B in 2 days, you want someone who can grasp that in 2 days, given the right tools and support? Or do you want someone who's going to actually go dig themselves to try to learn this because there is going to be no support? Those are, it's the same thing you're looking for, but you're looking for a very different type of person who will succeed versus one who might
that's
not in
true.
this situation, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I mean by the wrong person is you're bringing people in who are not able to succeed in the environment as it's currently set up because it does not fit how they operate. So that's kind of where I was going with that.
So their default preferences may be misaligned. And what you're talking about is like a learning orientation. You know, do you have someone who's curious, learning, able to adapt really quickly and do the learning themselves? Or are they more detailed conscious and likely to really succeed when they have someone really spelling out, you know, procedures, and they'll actually be great at following procedures? Very different preferences.
Yeah, exactly. So when put in the same situation, right, what is the type of individual that you
Mm-mm.
expect to succeed given the situation of your organization, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But also a lot of times, especially with not only with this company, but a lot of companies I've worked with, is they fail to define what those things are and what is the type of individual who will actually do well in this company. Who should I? And something I say with recruitment, you actually want to repel the people who are not a good fit and not try to
Mm-mm.
attract everyone, which is a mistake a lot of companies do during the hiring process. Is, hey, let's cast a wide net and we start
Yes.
filtering as we're going through the process. Like, no, you need to
Mm-mm.
repel the people who do not fit from the beginning, and you can do this with the communication, with the job posting details, a lot of the information you provide as part of the interview process and things of that sort, to sort of weed people out who will not be a good fit. Save yourself the trouble, save them the trouble, and just hire someone who will make sense for you.
And you work with a lot of companies, startups, and businesses that are scaling and growing in technology. Tell me a little bit about, you know, what are the things that founders need to worry about when they're thinking about people and technology working together?
Yeah, that's an amazing question, and I think it's becoming so much more relevant today with the
Yeah.
growth of AI. And let's like, every single day goes by, you hear something new or some
Yeah.
breakthrough with AI. But it's a very important question. Founders, I think, are a very, very important piece of a company's success or failure. Not only from the business side of things, but primarily from the people side of things. Founders, they transition from doing everything and wearing all hats in the early stages. For them to succeed, they need to transition to becoming more of a coach and a strategic visionary as opposed to someone who's trying to do everything all the time.
Right.
When it comes to people and technology, I think, again, it's an amazing question. People have always been great at doing work which requires significant cognitive abilities, creativity, work which is unstructured in nature.
Mm-mm.
Technology's always been great at doing work which is repeatable, which is predictable, and the
Yes.
inputs are clear. And people are not good at scaling. Human beings do not scale well. We procrastinate, we feel good one day, we feel bad another day. We have a fight with our friend, we're down. We win the lottery, we're ecstatic. So there's a lot of peaks and valleys, right? I mean, humans, one, we're not consistent, right? We're not like a machine. We can't operate at a certain consistency, and at the same time we cannot scale. So what I usually recommend to founders and any business owner is, you need to think of what is the work that a human should be doing, the work that only they can do. And I don't care what AI model you have today and whatever tool you have, they're not as good as a human being when it comes to doing the kind of work I described, right? We're probably, if we have this conversation again maybe in 10 years, who knows, right? The
That's right.
future is still unwritten. But the ability of human beings to understand technology and know how to manipulate it in a way where it can actually accentuate their capabilities is, I think, where founders need to be looking at today.
Yeah.
It's how do you use technology to really boost your human capabilities and really put it into overdrive. That's really where that balance is. And again, I say balance because it's a very fine line which is always moving given how fast technology is moving today. Like, there's
Yes.
examples today in the workplace where there's companies who have tried to replace their entire customer service team with AI,
Mm.
right? Some of them have been successful, some of them have not been. In the HR space, we're hearing a lot about AI coaches, AI consultants, AI mentors, and so forth, right? But the thing with AI specifically, the output is only as good as your input. And providing inputs to AI, again, depending on what the problem is, you can get a lot of questionable outputs from AI sometimes. So that's really the balance. It's like, hey, how do we make sure that people keep doing what they're good at? And how can we deploy technology in a way to really boost up their capabilities and
Mm.
have technology deal with the things that people are just not good at and will never be good at?
And I think I loved that you said people are not good at scaling because it's something to remember. I think that's a nice differentiator because I think, I speak to a lot of founders who are grappling with this because they're unaware of what the technology can do. And there's a lot of hype about what the
Oh yeah.
technology can do, right? So we
Oh
need
yeah.
to watch that hype. Some of it is hype, it's not reality. But I do agree that particularly for some of those tasks that people do on a repetitive scale, or perhaps when you're scaling up you want your market share to increase, your customer numbers to increase, your people can't maintain that consistency, but a machine can, an AI model can. And I think that's a really nice way of thinking about it, Nahed. I'm going to take that away.
No, I mean, I'll give you a little example of something I've deployed with some of the teams I've worked with recently. Is let's talk about interviewing again in HR.
Yes.
The recruitment process is one of the most human capital intensive process in any HR department, right?
Mm-mm.
The amount of interviews you do and so forth and all that kind of thing. Like these AI assistants today, these note takers that jump on calls and take notes and summarize. Deployed that at one of the companies I work with, and it was saving approximately 30 minutes per interview,
Yes.
for the recruiter. Take that at a company that's scaling and growing quickly and multiply
Mm-hmm.
that by the number of recruiters you're actually doing this. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in saving financially, not to mention their time and their ability to actually do more than what they're doing today because of that complementary tool, right?
Yes.
And these are tools which are super, super low costs, right? Like something like Fathom
Mm-hmm.
AI and so forth. It's like, what Calendly did, 10 years ago with people would
Scheduling.
hire an admin assistant only to schedule meetings for them. That
Yes.
job doesn't exist today. Just to schedule meetings, like you just have a $20 a month subscription that does it better than any human being.
That's right.
So, I mean, we're only going to go from here, right? It's
Mm.
just evolution happening, and people adapt to it.
Yeah, I love that example because it's simple, and I'm always a bit of an early adopter, so I've been using note takers for a long time, and
Yeah.
I immediately saw that my own productivity increase, and so I keep sharing this with others. But it's the simple things that is actually, and it's also a task that people are happy to give over to something else because it doesn't create, I don't need to be defensive about my own higher order cognitive skills being taken away. Yes, someone else can do the note taking, no problem. Someone else can summarize the meetings and give me a sense of actions, no problem. And so it's a low risk way of moving to automation as well.
Yeah.
So I love
Exactly.
that. And
Yeah.
because I think sometimes that's the other thing with it, feels like it's quite a risky period we're in because there's a lot of uncertainty, yes, but there can be low risk processes that you can put in place that can save you hours and increase your productivity. Totally agree.
I agree with you because to your point, it is a big debate today as, hey, is AI going to be replacing some jobs? Is it going to be like killing some industries and things of that sort? I think like it could do that, right? Because a lot of technology does that. Yeah, there's a lot of jobs I can think of that, hey, might not exist in 5 to 10 years. But I think if you look at technology evolution throughout, the centuries, that's kind of been the same narrative all the time. It's really about, okay, how do we deploy? And again, there's a lot of hype around it. I'll give you an
Yes.
example. There's a lot of talk today about, hey, AI is going to replace software developers because AI can actually code. I was on a demo with a company that is considered one. I'm not going to name the company name, but it's one of the leaders in the space that is developing an AI coder. I was on a demo with them just last week, and the app crashed after 2 minutes. And for those people who don't know, like I used to do some like hobbyist kind of web development early in my days, so I kind of understand a little bit of the code. So it was one of the most basic kind of coding exercises, and the thing just went haywire. It just crashed, and the person demoing had to actually, and the person was a developer. He had to actually troubleshoot it for like 5 minutes to get it to understand how to continue.
Right.
So there is a lot of hype. There's a lot of,
Yes.
hey, we're talking the talk, but are we going to walk it? Right? But of course, with time, we're going to get there. I think we're going to get there to
Yes,
some
we
point.
will
But
get there.
again, we will get there. It's a lot about how do us people make sure that we keep leveraging our strengths. And again, I mean, I was in a car like 2 weeks ago in San Francisco in Phoenix that was driving itself. right? The Waymo cars, like
Wow.
self-driving.
We
You
don't,
get in
I
the
haven't
car,
been, yeah, I
you
haven't
get
experienced
no,
that.
just it was crazy. Like you get on the app, right? The car arrives. It's a fully electric car. You get into it. You buckle your seatbelt up, and it just goes. It stops on traffic lights. It makes turns. And I was staying in a hotel which had a very narrow parking lot. It went in there, the whole forward, reverse, and out. It was like it was better than a human being driving. So I'm like, yeah, I can see drivers not existing. In 5 years from now. So I'm like, there's a lot of stuff happening. It's really crazy. But again, there's things that human beings will probably always be able to do better,
Yes. And
especially
leveraging our
unstructured work.
strengths is important, really, isn't it?
Yes, yes,
That's an important message, leveraging our strengths. So,
exactly.
Nahed, it's been lovely talking to you. We're nearly at the end. What I wanted to do, though, is give you an opportunity to maybe, what are the sort of top 5 recommendations for founders who are really struggling with scaling or want to scale and are thinking, what do I need to do with my people function? In terms of the experience you've had, if you had
Yeah.
a list, doesn't have to be 5, but if you had a list of the top priorities, what would they be?
No, I think that's an amazing question. There's a few things that I notoriously see all the time with founders, regardless of the stage I start working with them. Number one is founders need to learn how to delegate. The reason I say that is a lot of founders, they get so used to doing things themselves and being the sole decision maker for everything. It's very difficult to let go and give decisions like, hey, this is my baby, this is my company, right? And when it comes to decisions around people specifically, most founders that I've worked with who develop or design their businesses, they're usually either on the product side, the business side, the technology side. They're not people who fundamentally have had experiences or understand the nuances that happen on the people side of things, and they kind of operate based on their best knowledge at the time, and usually with good intent. But it gets them into trouble if they're not really able to handle certain situations. And I mean, to be honest, a lot of companies, when they come to me, they're usually having some sort of problem where they've tried to do it themselves. So that's the first thing I would say to founders. Hey, try to, and the advice I give to founders typically in this space is take some time and list down what are the things that, one, you're good at doing, and two, you enjoy doing. And I think those two are important because you want longevity and sustainability.
Yes.
Everything else, try to see who can take it off your hands. Is it someone in the company, or do you just outsource it completely?
Mm-mm.
Most founders who do that, they tell me this has been the most liberating thing we've ever done, um, because it's really taxing on you. So that's the first thing
Yes.
I would give them as advice. The second thing is, the team that got you to success right now is not necessarily the team that's going to take you to the next
Love
milestone of
that.
success.
Yeah.
Typically, where I see that manifest a lot, I see it a lot in two different phases. Early stage startups, especially first time founders who start experiencing that success, like, hey, we're making money, we're growing, we're in the news, we have customers, we have so much customers that we barely can meet demand today. Hey, we've knocked it out of the park, we're a success. We're going to go from 10 million to 100 million. Let's go, high fives. Right? A company at 10 million looks very different than a company at 100 million. And to get it there, you need to do something very different than what you're doing today. That's in a lot of cases a blind spot for
Mm.
companies. I've seen founders crash and burn their companies by refusing to make changes to their team, usually because there's either very close relationships prior to starting the company, even sometimes family members, college
Yes.
friends, and so forth. It becomes much more difficult to create that separation. And when I say change the team, I don't mean fire everyone. I mean, make sure that people are deployed in the roles which they can succeed in and add value in the organization, right? If someone was the head of finance today, right, for a $5 million company, maybe they should not be the head of finance for $100 million company, because they don't really have the skill set yet to do that. So having that consciousness to decide and to determine, hey, this is the time where I need different kind of expertise
Yeah.
to come in to help us get over the hump. So that I think is a second thing which is pretty important. The third thing I would say is about scaling itself. Scaling is one of the trickiest things to nail down in terms of timing. When is the right time for it? A lot of companies that I've worked with have either tried to scale too quickly or too
Yeah.
slowly. And what is the difference and what are the challenges there? Scale too
Mm-hmm.
quickly, meaning that what ends up happening is you overinvest in growing the company, your revenue doesn't meet the investment, and you put yourself in a financial hole. A lot of companies don't survive that financial hole because, I
Yes.
mean, when I say these things to people, they're like, "How come?" I'm like, "Yeah, just remember, we only hear about 1% of companies in the news. Those PE and VC backed companies. 99% of startups have no venture capital funding. It's
Exactly.
bootstrapped, loans, and so
Exactly.
forth. So, right, and I happen to work with a combination of those. So that's why
Mm-mm.
I'm like, hey guys, a lot of times if you scale too quickly and if you get it wrong, you are most likely, you are pretty much hammering that first nail in your
Yeah.
coffin. So you need to be careful. But scale too slowly and you miss a lot of opportunities, especially if you're in a new space. Competitors come in, they grow, they capture market
Mm-hmm.
share, and you're sitting there wondering what happened, right? What happened and why am I here? So these are something. So for example, what I would say to founders in this stage is hire experts who are able to advise you on when is the right time to scale.
Mm.
And typically that's a combination of market conditions, your financial capabilities, your product portfolio, the team you have. There's a lot of things that come into that. But having some advisors that guide you really on how to do that is super, super important. Number 4, focus on culture from day one and be very deliberate about it. What do
Yes.
I mean by that? From day one, you need to have a very serious conversation about what is the are we as a company? How do we want to operate? What is important to us? What are the things we will do versus what we will not do? I like to give an example on this one because there's a company I dealt with recently which was sort of going through this identity crisis. And once we had this conversation, it was pretty crystal clear to them, like, yeah, this is what our culture should be. Well, oh my God, half of our people actually don't fit that culture. It's kind of interesting. But
Mm-mm.
this was a company that operates in the e-commerce space. So growing company, I think it was around like the $60 million revenue mark and growing, heavily. And this was around the time when the whole in the US, the whole George Floyd situation happened,
Right.
Black Lives Matter movement, and so
Mm-mm.
forth.
Mm-mm.
So the founder and the leadership team, they're like, hey, we're an e-commerce company. Yes, it's sad what happened, but we don't want to get involved in this stuff. Like, I don't want to go be posting on social media. I don't want to be having bulletins internally. Like, we are a company that focuses on this. This is what we want to focus on. This is what we care about. We're not here to save the world. It's sad we don't condone it, but we are not going to advocate for it.
And this was in the
Against it.
context of many organizations being asked to do that, right? So,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. And
Mm-mm.
the reason this conversation started is because a lot of the employees in turn, like, oh my God, why aren't we doing anything? Why aren't we speaking out about this and so forth? So the company came to a decision after some very deliberate conversations is that, hey, us as a company, right, we respect human values, we respect everyone, and to the benefit of the company, a very diverse company internally, right? We respect diversity, we're all for it, and I think the company demographics are a good indicator of that, but we are not going to engage
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
social stuff
Mm-hmm.
externally. If
Yeah.
you like it, great. If you don't like it, come to us. We'll actually pay you a severance to go.
Right.
It was a
Interesting.
very bold move, right?
Very bold.
But
Yes.
very bold. But I think that's the kind of boldness you need to think of as a founder from day
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
What are the things that will fly in this company versus
Mm,
not? And
mm.
again, when you try to please everyone, you please no one.
Exactly.
So focus on what is the company that you're going to have, what kind of people are going to be able to operate here, what kind of values that they
Mm-mm.
need to have, ways of working, and so forth, and stick to it. Now, culture is not static, it evolves over time. So don't be a hardhead. And that goes into like number 4. 3 is be deliberate about culture,
Yeah.
right? And 4, but finally, number 5, do not hold to your guns all the time and be open that as you grow and as your organization develops, you need to be open to changes, right? I have another
Yes.
example on this one. There was a gaming company I was working with around 5 years ago, right? And you can tell from my background, I'm kind of passionate about life.
Yeah.
Like, been loving the gaming scene for a long time, and it was like, hey, working with a gaming company, that's pretty cool. So this was a company that, as part of their hiring, their first 4 years approximately, they will only hire people who have a lot of interest in the industry or who are actually gamers themselves. Like, part of the interviews, they actually asked gaming stuff in the interviews. They're like,
Right.
hey, if they don't love this industry and they don't know it, they can't succeed here. I
Mm-hmm.
respect that.
Mm-hmm.
As the company grew, right, and they grew past 80-90 million dollars, they
Yeah.
needed some levels of expertise that don't fit the archetype of people who typically you will see in the gaming scene. So
Yes.
there was this dilemma, like, okay, do we reject this person because they don't love our industry, right, or they just don't fit the mold of the culture here?
Yeah.
So there was some heavy conversations there where it's like, no, you know what, we're different today, it's a different business. Yes, we're
Yes.
still passionate about our industry, but like, hey, if we have a gaming day on Friday and you don't participate, you're not going to get shunned.
Yeah.
It's fine, right? It's
Yeah.
fine. So there was a bit of a shift there where that became
Yeah.
the norm. Like, hey, that part of interviewing and recruitment and selecting folks is no longer part of it. Right? We're only going to
Mm-hmm.
focus on certain things for that role. Culture is very important,
Yeah.
but there are little nuances which can develop over time. So
Mm.
that's another. So those are, I would say, that some of the primary 5 things that I see very consistently that I think
Yeah.
really apply to most startups.
Fantastic. I love your top five. I agree with all of them. And I love particularly the last one about really being flexible and creating a reset as you
Yeah,
grow, because
evolution.
yeah, exactly. Things do change. And you're right, what led to your success when you're small is maybe not what you need when you start to
Yeah,
grow. And I can see that as well. So thank
exactly.
you, Nahed. It's been lovely to speak to you. Before we go, I know you're a podcast host as well. Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, my podcast is called Organized Chaos,
Mm-hmm.
a very fitting name for the work I do. And you can find it at organizedchaos.fyi to learn more about it, but also like on all the apps, from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and so forth. The podcast is really designed for founders and HR leaders who operate in startups and who are at that 7-figure mark and want to scale and grow through people. And really, like, the tagline for the podcast, as well as my business in general, is I help 7-figure companies go to 9 figures by turning HR into rocket fuel for their growth. It's that,
Lovely.
and I like to compare it to rockets, is because if you have a rocket, let's look at cars. Why rockets? Like, if you have a Ferrari and you put in like this cheap fuel that you drive your Hyundai in, it's not going to work properly, right? It's probably going to damage the engine. So a sports car needs that kind of fuel. Rockets need rocket fuel. You need the right
Yeah.
enabler and the right catalyst to get your company to grow.
Mm,
And from my perspective and my lens, the people function and people in general are the catalyst to any business's success. So get that right, you will succeed, assuming that you have all the other things in check with your business.
yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Nahed. So many pearls of wisdom there. So, and we'll look forward to catching up with the podcast. I'm going to go and have a listen. So,
No,
thank you
thank you.
so much.
No, thank you. Love being on the show, and thanks for having me
Yeah,
again.
it's my pleasure.